Hi, welcome. In this video, I'm going to get you started on program 6. So a couple of things, you should have completed program 4 and program 5 before working on program 6. Be sure that let's download the instructions and take a look at it. All right, so in this program, we're going to use many of the features from program 4 and program 5. We are going to use the file the same way we did in program 5. So I recommend going back to do program 5 because that's much easier, a less complicated program. And program 4, we are going to use some of those features, but we're going to add some different features here. So you will use the same display balance function from program 4, but you will notice here that program 6, we are now adding input-output parameters. So any parameters that have this asterisk, that means that that's a pointer parameter. And of course, the purpose of this assignment is to do practice input-output parameters and programmer-defined functions. So the display still has some pass by copy or pass by value parameters, and the process selection has one pass by copy, but 2 input-output parameters. So you're going to have a greeting function. You're going to have a run menu function. So in this program is going to be a little different than before. Instead of having 6 or 7 options, you're just going to have a D for deposit, a W for withdraw, or a Q to quit. Then once you pick the D for deposit, W to withdraw, or Q to quit, I'll go down to the sample output here. Then you're going to enter, if you picked W for withdrawal, you'll enter 1 for savings, for checking, and 2 for savings. If you enter D for deposit, you'll enter 1 for checking and 2 for savings. Now, why are we doing that? Just for more practice with conditions, more practice using characters, more practice using integers, more practice comparing. You know, it's not the most practical way to do it, but it is just for practice. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 programmer-defined functions. And we have some added features, and we're going to make our main function a little smaller by adding a process selection function, adding the run menu function. I think you might have already done a run menu that had a character return or an integer return. I'm not really sure, but in this program, we're going to run the menu and we're going to use an input-output parameter. We are also adding another function which is going to return a 1 if you have enough money in your account to do a transaction, meaning to do the withdrawal, and it will return a 0 if you do not have enough money to do the withdrawal. So there's a few different features that have been added. And since you're going to be putting a 1 for checking or a 2 for savings, you do not need to add the account when you are passing to the deposit money. The display balance, you are going to continue to add the account so that you can do the same as program 4. So that I've added some different features, some different things to practice. So please, you should be familiar with a couple of things. First of all, you should have done program 4 and program 5 successfully. If not, you should go back and work on program 4 and program 5. Specifically program 5 for the file part, because we're doing the same file part that we did in program 5. And you be sure also to add the F close here at the end after you save your balances. You are going to do just like program 5 where you create the file and then you read from the file. If you are using Xcode, you need to make sure that you put the full path. Xcode, even if you put the balances input file in the same directory as your source code, Xcode wants you to put the path. So be sure that you put the path, you locate the path, and that's how you have to do it if you're using an Apple and Xcode. All right, so let's get started. I'm assuming when I get started here that you have completed program 4 and you have completed program 5. So the focus of this video is working on these functions that have the input-output parameters and also breaking up our program into a more modular way, adding the process selection function. All right, so let's get started. I've already created my empty project and put the template code into my compiler. So you didn't have to watch me do that on video. So we will start here. We have our greeting function, our run menu function, which is for the D, W, and Q. Our process selection, it's going to take the D, W, and Q, and then it's also going to take the address of the checking balance and the address of the savings balance, because when we process our selection, we're going to have to then offload that to whatever the selection is. So if the selection happens to be a D, then we're going to have to offload the checking or the savings balance onto the deposit money function. So this is practice, passing addresses, passing by copy, passing by reference. So these are passed by reference. Oops, these two are passed by reference. This one is passed by copy. You will know that when it has that asterisk, that's the difference. These are pointers or passed by reference parameters. These are not. These are just passed by copy or passed by value parameters. So you have a little bit of both, and we also have a function with an integer return type, so not all the functions are a void return type. Then we have our main function. In our main function, we will declare and initialize our checking and savings balance. We will connect, we will declare our file pointers. We will give our greeting. So the first thing you're going to do is your greeting. Then we're going to create a file, the balances input file, and we're going to put our two numbers in there. And then we're going to connect to that same file, and we're going to read our two balances out of that file. Again, it's redundant. It's just practice. So you get a chance to create a file and read from a file. The one thing I didn't put in the description, but I was sure to add here is be sure to close your file pointer. So let's build this template and see if it even builds, because I've taken some things out and added some things. So let's see if the template code actually builds. And we have some warnings here that we have unreferenced variables. We do have this one right here. In some compilers, if you have a return type other than void, it may not compile. So I'm just going to put a return 1 here. It's not implemented yet. It's just that because this has an integer return type, it's always a good idea to have a return from that function that matches it. Once we implement that function, then we're going to, of course, add those features. I just wanted to get rid of that one warning. Okay, so now when I run it, I don't think it does anything. It doesn't do anything. But if I navigate to the project, I will see that it hopefully has created the file, put the balances in the file, and then of course it has the same balances because I haven't done any work. All right, so let's get started on our implementation. The nice thing about the template is that I've given you pretty much everything. You have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 functions. And then we have our whole, our main here, which we're going to do, but we're going to implement the functions one at a time and then test them. Then implement the next function, then test it. Then we're going to put it all together. So the first thing I'm going to do is start implementing my functions. My first function I'm going to implement is going to be my greeting function. I've given you the complete, outline here so you can use it. I suggest, even if you don't want to use it, I suggest that you please take a look at it so that you will know what I'm expecting. Also, don't ever use global variables in this course. You will notice I have no global variables up here. The purpose of these assignments is to practice functions. So global variables kind of defeats that purpose. And you should use function prototypes with good comments. Add comments in between your code that explains what's happening. And function definitions also should have good comments on them. So let's do our first greet. Of course, you should put a better greeting than this. I'm just going to put the word welcome. Do not put just the word welcome. Explain what the program does. I just don't want you to have to sit here and watch me type. I've made a change, so now I'm going to build it and test it, and now it is welcoming the user. All right, so the next function I'm going to implement is I'm going to implement my run menu function. My run menu function is the function that allows me, that asks the user if they want what they want to enter, and it has a input output parameter. So let's go down here to my run menu function. Okay, so here it's going to display the choices. Again, you should do a much better display than this, but I'm not going to waste your time. Enter D. Oh, I should say enter. Enter D, W, or Q to quit. Now here's the big change here. This is where we're going to do scanf. Now the second argument to scanf is always going to be a pointer, but since this right here already is a pointer, we're not going to put address of. This is the whole purpose of this assignment, is to practice doing using pointer parameters. So we're going to put our space here for %C, but then we're not going to put the ampersand here. The reason we're not going to put an ampersand here is because this choice pointer already is an address. So if you are unfamiliar with that, go back into the module on Canvas that says pointers and input output parameters. There's tons of videos and notes and more videos and more notes and practice code and lots of and an animated PowerPoint. All of these features to help you to understand how these input output parameters work and how they work with scanf. So please go back and review that. So now I've done this function run menu. Please do a much better explanation to the user. And now I need to call this function. I'm going to use my main function as a driver, and actually I will be using this I will be running the menu in my main function for this program. All right, so I need to pass the address of selection. The reason I need to pass the address of selection is because this is a double, and this is a character, and this is an address of a character. And if I look at the prototype for the run menu function, the parameter is not a character. The parameter is an address of a character. So when I call this function, I'm going to pass the address of the selection. So now I want to make sure that that is working. So I'm going to build it and test it. All right, so enter. So I haven't done my loop yet. So because I haven't done my loop yet, it's just it just calls it once, but I can complete my loop here. So if this is not intuitive to you, while selection does not equal Q and selection does not equal Q, you can certainly use the toUpper or the toLower function from ctype.h. So you can use toUpper or toLower from ctype.h. I'm going to leave it like this. So what's going to happen if the user enters any letter other than Q, it's going to go in the loop because X does not equal Q and X does not equal Q, for example. D does not equal Q and D does not even equal Q. But if I put Q, Q does not equal Q. If it's a lowercase q, that would be false, but this would be true. And in order for the logical and to be true, both sides must be true. So that's how that works. So I wanted to demonstrate that to you. So I'm going to do my loop here. I need to initialize by getting the selection. I test the selection, and then I update. So I'm just going to add a printf here that says I am inside the while loop. So the reason I'm doing that is because I believe in always giving feedback and making sure that my while loop is working as expected. So I want to make sure that I get my selection. If I put anything other than Q, I will be inside the while loop, get my next selection. So I want to make sure that by entering a Q, I can stop the loop. All right, W, R, D, anything, Q, the loop stops. Okay, so my loop is working. So that's the next step. I did skip displaying the balances, and lucky for me, if I already finished program 4, I have already implemented my display balance function. So I'm going to go down here and make sure that the display balance function, you have your account. If it's a C, you print your checking balance. If it's an S, you print your savings balance. And look at that, I gave it to you. All right, so we will display the balance here. We're going to display the balance here. So if we want to display the balance for our checking, you just go here for the checking, and then you can display the balance again for the savings. So this should be review. You should have already done this. We're just using this display balance function again. All right, so now if I look through the logic, I'm got my checking balance. I'm going to create my file. I'm going to get the balances from the file. I'm going to display the balances onto the screen. I'm going to get the letter from the user, make sure it's not a Q. I'm inside my while loop now. Get the next letter, make sure it's not a Q. I'm inside the while loop. Get the next letter. Oops, they entered a Q. Display the balances again and save the file. So let's test that. So this is what this is our whole main function now. Our main function is much smaller, and the process selection function is going to be doing all of the work. W, E, D, C, Q. Okay, so that's working. So in the next video, we're going to start doing these functions down here one by one.